I keep track of Henry's calls here because he's got, I see his calls come in. He's got one of those little message things for him.
Game's at 2:08 is the official kick time this week. 2:08.
All right, guys. It's been, I was talking to our coaches on Sunday. It's been a little different, kind of a start and stop kind of feel to the season a little bit. I even going back to, South Dakota on a Thursday night, and then the 2 extra days to get ready to go to New Mexico State, and then it's Rutgers in the open date. So it's kind of been a little herky-jerky here. It's been a lot of practice for 3 games. But that's certainly about to change now. I mean, it's full on now, 9 straight weeks and, starting conference play. So, like any open date, like any program, you try to take full advantage of it. And, we hopefully have done that. I think, you go back and just kind of analyze a little bit of, why we're 1 and 2. I think you could point it to, and again, statistics you can do a lot of things with, man. You can tweak them, you can spin them, you can convince yourself of something. But, looking through all that, I think the field position piece of it has been absolutely our biggest problem. And with that said, there's no one reason it's been that. You start with the South Dakota game. They started on our 36-yard line after a 10-yard punt. Fortunately, they didn't score. But we were better than South Dakota. Then you go to New Mexico State. They start on the 19, on our 19, after a fumble. They start on our 27 after an interception. They score 10 points. So that's the 19-yard line and 27-yard line in a very close game. Then you go to Rutgers. They start on our 36 after about a 32-yard punt with a return. They start on our 35 after about a 33-yard punt. They start on our 16 after a short punt and a significant return. They score a touchdown on a return punt. And they start on our 49 after the botched onside. So if you look at the totality of that, that's why in total defense we're okay. Really pretty good as far as just yards per game. Total offense, we're really pretty good. If you look total yards per game, we're doing some good things, but yet we haven't been able to win. So that piece of it, the field position piece, which that's a lot of things. We could sit here and talk for 5 hours what that is. That's at times we haven't punted the ball well. We didn't cover a couple punts against a really good returner. We gave up some big plays on defense, which forced bad field position. It's a lot of things. It's not one thing. So field position and then giving up some big plays on defense when, we stood up here before the season and said, okay, we hope to be able to win some games on defense. We played okay, but we've given up big plays. One at New Mexico State before the half. Not the best call, but worse communication on the field. They get the big play before the first half that was huge as you look back on this season right now. You go to Rutgers, they have the big pass where it's simply just communication there. The call was made. We had another strong safety in the game. We didn't get it communicated with the corner. It was actually the corner's fault. They come out of there and run a 75-yard touchdown. So, I could stand here and talk all day, but the point of the open date is to really research, number one, and find out who you are and why things happen. Then the second thing for us, I think, is, to what causes those little breakdowns where we have to be absolutely on point, not just in the game. It all starts in practice with no mood swings, no lack of focus, no ups, no downs, just a very consistent approach every second because there's no margin for error. We're like a lot of other schools. If you watch college football this weekend, there are a lot of us out there. There's a lot of us. So again, that's what you do over the open date. You work to get better. You work to absolutely get better. And, hopefully we'll find out if we have. Then the second thing, you try to get healthy. You try to get healthy. And then you go recruit your tail off. So that's what we kind of did. Obviously, San Jose State comes in. San Jose State's a good team. San Jose beat us last year. In San Jose, it was the week before the open date. This year, it's the week after the open date. So, again, you guys got some questions. Rick, let's just go ahead and start with you.
Your defense is designed in part to create turnovers, and you've gotten 0 the last couple of weeks. Is there anything else you can do other than what you're doing?
I think that's absolutely that case of another thing when you talk about field position in there. We have turned the ball over a little bit. We had 2 turnovers forced against South Dakota, but it's been a drought since. I don't think you do anything more than just keep preaching and keep teaching and keep doing what you do. Sometimes they kind of come in bunches, it seems. So certainly, though, that is a piece of it, creating turnovers. If you're going to give up a big play on defense, you better create a big play on defense. And we haven't been able to knock that ball out. We had to turn her over on the punt, that we had against Rutgers when we punted the ball, but we haven't forced anything on defense. I think it's just continue to do what we do and, keep emphasizing it. But that's absolutely a key right now why we're 1-2.
Your punting game isn't as strong as you would like it to be. Are you finding yourself opting to go for it or consider going for it more on 4th down than maybe you would because of
JP, we go for it on 4th down depending on field position. We go for it as much as any school in the country. Those situations at Rutgers, we were backed up for different reasons. One of them a decision by me to go onside kick that affected field position. Lee Crosby had the penalty on 3rd down where they probably would have punted that ball. Field position. All those things add up. Our punting game hasn't been as good as we hoped it would be. It's inconsistent. We do have a new punter. We do have a punter coming back next week after 4 weeks because of an academic issue that may be in the mix. But to just put it on the punter is absolutely not the case. It's the accumulation of a lot of things. But that doesn't really affect me going for it on 4th down as much as just what the field position is.
You talked about stopping, starting, stuff like that. The Hurricanes working well. With the conference starting, does this feel like a fresh start? Like, hey, it's 0-0 now, let's go.
Yeah, I think that's easy to say. I think, probably every coach in the country right now is talking about, okay, it's 0-0, we're undefeated right now, we're unscored upon. I mean, let's be honest, it is a lot more than that. You don't ever just wipe the slate. If you do, you're not being very smart. Whatever you learned in those first 3 weeks, well, they apply to these next 9 weeks as well. So I think, yeah, from a coach speak kind of thing, you say, hey, let's wipe the slate. It's all good now, let's go. The reality is we feel different being 1-2 than we'd have felt if we were 2-1 and 3-0, and that's the reality of it. So don't bury your head in the sand. That's what we are, and here's what we got to do to work to get better.
You said that the Tulsa game last year was the worst in your opinion, but San Jose State had to be a real disappointment at the time. Certainly not revenge, but you talk to the players about maybe vindication?
Yeah, I don't quite go that far. San Jose went to a bowl game last year. San Jose State in the last 5 years has had a lot more success than New Mexico football has had. You think when Mike McIntyre was there, Mike McIntyre turned it over to Ron Carragher. I'm not sure I sit back and say, boy, we lost to San Jose last year. Oh, my God. San Jose State's ahead of us. We're still trying to catch San Jose. So I think easy on, oh, my God, we lost at San Jose State last year. I mean, really? I never thought of it that way. I thought Tyler Irvin was a heck of a player. I thought they had really good players, a good coaching staff, good program in place, great tradition. So, Rick, maybe I see that a little bit differently. I think it's 2 teams that are, both on the upswing, both that are kind of in that bowl eligible or not eligible world of fighting their tail off. So absolutely not, though I see it as a revenge or, oh, my God, we lost to San Jose. I mean, that's like an insult to them. I mean, who are we to say San Jose's an upset, beating us? I'm not quite ready to do that just yet.
How odd is it not having a home game for a month? I mean, this is the first
That's what I mean. JP, I think that kind of ties into that feeling of it's a little bit herky-jerky and a little bit start and stop, the fact that we haven't played a home game in a while. But again, I addressed that up with all of our players. I know it seems like we've been practicing a lot. We've only won one game. Don't get burnt out. Don't feel like, oh man, this is like a long, slow process. It's here now. It's on now. We're going to find out over these next several weeks what we are. But certainly that Thursday night game, open date, no home game since basically August plays into that, and here we are in October now.
But the one that you started, do you feel like you kind of added pressure to, like, the win to not start a trend going the wrong way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I felt at 1-0, as I said, going to Las Cruces. That was a huge game for us. And going to Rutgers last week, I said I didn't feel any different going to Rutgers than I felt the Tuesday or Wednesday before going to Las Cruces, that we fully expected to win that game. So absolutely, there's a lot of pressure on this game. And this is a huge game for us. Playing a conference game at home, being 1-2, let's not make any bones about it. With Boise State coming and Air Force in Dallas the next two, this is a huge game.
Can you talk about the advantage of what it's like for a quarterback to go into a game knowing that he's going to be the starter? Because Austin talked
Yeah.
about that earlier this year, just how relaxed and composed he was able to be going into a game knowing that he was the guy. So does the same apply to Lamar?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think, I've seen that in practice the last 2 days with Lamar. Lamar is the guy. And that definitely is one of the downsides of having the two quarterback system. Where a guy, it's hard to truly put your personality on it, truly know that you're going to live to play another snap or another series if you make a mistake, if there are just inherently two quarterbacks. And I absolutely do think that helps Lamar this week. And I was really thinking about that walking over here, quite honestly, that I'm anxious to see Lamar now that he has been through what a lot of quarterbacks go through. He started, he got replaced, he came back and alternated against Rutgers, and now he's come full circle where he's the guy again. And I think he's in a great position right now, just having learned a lot of lessons and really appreciating what it is to be that guy out there every down. And I'm anxious to watch Lamar play. I really am. And I think that point is a very good point because I kind of do see it just in Lamar's body language when you know you're the guy.
Does that help the rest of the offense, knowing one guy's the guy?
I don't think. I don't think that's quite as big a deal. I think, both those guys' personalities are pretty strong. It's not like one guy's one thing and the other guy's the other thing. I don't think it makes that much difference to those other kids in the huddle. These guys are amazing. I mean, they're resilient. I mean, they go from something happened yesterday to today. It's a whole different world. So I don't think that's the issue, but I definitely do think it does affect that guy that's the quarterback that knows he's not, somebody's not in the bullpen every time he throws a ball.
How do you think it might look with Lamar quarterbacking against San Jose State? That's the game he didn't play last year.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. I talked to Lamar about, I remember standing on the sidelines last year and thinking, okay, did we do the right thing by using this as the game Austin goes? Should we have played him a little bit different? Well, I guess now we find out. But again, San Jose State has switched defensive coordinators, and really they've switched entire coaching staffs on the defensive side of the ball. So what happened last year really is zero significance this year. I think they have all new coaches on defense.
I forgot to ask you about that boat ride yesterday.
Yeah.
Instead.
I think Boatwright will be out this week again. It was a significant turf toe. Hopefully Boise. Hopefully he's back Friday night against Boise. He is getting better. It's just kind of a slow process because, as you know, that circulation down in that toe is not exactly a flowing river of circulation.
The advantage San Jose State has because they have a coach that was on their staff last year, is that significant is overblown?
Yeah, I thought about that. I don't think it really matters. We certainly have had Al Simmons on our staff the last 2 years from Colorado State. We didn't beat Colorado State. You know, so I think at the end, it's a great source of just talking about here's what this kid looks like, here's how big this kid is, here's this kid's personality, here's kind of what they call this. But at the end of the day, when that ball is snapped, I think it's of zero significance. You know, as long as we change those signals from a year ago where the signals aren't the same.
Gambo's coming off a one-catch performance against Rutgers. Was that a matchup thing, or is there something going on?
Yeah, I think that's a great point because Gambo, I tell you, Gambo has really taken advantage of his opportunities. I mean, he can make some spectacular catches and spectacular plays. And I did walk away from Rutgers a little bit. Boy, you'd like to see Gambo's hands on the ball a little more. They were playing a lot of press coverage on the outside, and we went to a lot of those little fade comeback type plays. I don't know if it was so much of a matchup, JP. It's just he didn't touch the ball enough against Rutgers. And that's one of the problems of being that guy in our offense. You know, there's been a lot of times this year where we've gone two backs instead of three wide receivers. You know, we've taken that third wide receiver out, which is really Gambo or Emmanuel Harris, and put two running backs in there instead with two true wideouts. So he's that Z that sometimes gets taken out of the game when we have two backs in there instead of one. So his number of opportunities have been reduced a little bit.
You know, last year you were able to win a lot of these close games, kind of nip and tuck games.
Yeah.
That was the difference going down the stretch. I mean, how fine of a line is it between
Yeah.
that line and what's your
You know, I go back to starting the season. Really went into spring football talking to our team about, again, you've heard me say it, there wasn't a game we won last year that quite honestly we couldn't have lost. I mean, every one of those games we won, we could have lost. And I'm not talking about, it's obvious to say that, but that margin was that much. Now, there wasn't a game we lost that we couldn't have won, quite honestly. And we still are that team. We still are that team. And there are a lot of teams like us. So how do you address that small margin for error? How do you do that? And that's something, honestly, I mean, that's all of our time spent on that. And as much the off-the-field piece of the advantage of you being totally disciplined, you totally being consistent, where you don't have, as I talked about before, the mood swings, you know, where one day in practice, I'm a little moody. And all of a sudden, that might have been that one rep or that one exact thing that got us beat in the game. Or maybe sometimes there's an arrogance of, okay, I've got this. You know, I've played enough snaps now. I got it. I'm good. So those are the things that take away that razor sharpness that can affect that margin for error. And that is absolutely our world that we are in. Right now, if you go look, New Mexico State, we had the ball late in the game to beat New Mexico State. Not unlike about 3 of the last 4 wins we had. It was pretty much like that, honestly. Rutgers, no question. You know, we're up 21-0. We could have won that game, but we didn't. So, you know, and again, not to keep going, but 2 years ago, we go to Utah State, we lose by a touchdown. We beat Utah State at home last year. We go to Air Force, we lose by a touchdown. We beat Air Force in a close game at home last year. We had Boise at home 2 years ago, close game, had the ball at the end on the controversial call. This year we go to Boise and beat Boise. Last year we go to Boise and beat Boise in a close game. That is what this is. That is what this is. And, you know, fortunately, we are in a position where on most weeks, we're going to be in that position where there's a very small margin. And now how do we do it? How do we become the team that wins those close games? And you need a lot of things. You know, you need some good fortune too. You really do.
Tyler Irvin's gone, which is not a bad thing. Big play, I mean, you know, it's a high risk, high reward defense that you play, and big plays are still a concern. The plays that Irvin did last year, were they a function of that defense, or were they more just?
Yeah, there were a couple different things, you know, and it's funny because Tyler Irvin and Gipp, I'm not saying Gipp is Tyler Irvin, but they remind me of each other so much. And, you know, Gipp hit the long run against them. Tyler Irvin hit the long run against us. But last year's game against them, is very similar to what's going on right now with us. And just to go back a minute to Rutgers, Rutgers had two big plays, the long pass and the long run, against base zone coverage, both those. So the exactness and the vulnerability of big plays really are no different, sometimes less when you're pressuring than when you're just playing zone, because there's still communication and there's still single gap responsibilities. So our big plays are not a byproduct. We've gone back and researched everything as much as, okay, we're blitzing here and we got beat, as a combination of preciseness and exactness. And you've heard me talk about this before. When you don't have, like a lot of teams, when you don't have that difference maker, that guy that just wreaks havoc in there. You know, for instance, Washington on tape against Rutgers. Washington had two big inside defensive tackles. I mean, I'm talking about space eaters, guys 335 pounds in there. That their exactness, for example, doesn't have to be as exact. But we're in there with Garrett Hughes at Rutgers and Nick at 265 pounds, and that back hits that crease. It's got to be exact because they get a 310-pound offensive tackle on that 260-pound defensive end. You have to be unbelievably exact, which is fine. That's what we are. But it's a bit of a misnomer to say it's a high-risk, high-reward defense, because a lot of our high risks have come playing base, playing zone. You know, but we could go back. South Dakota hit us on a jailbreak against man, blitz. You know, there are times it happens, but not as much as you kind of think when it comes to that. You know, it's preciseness in all things. That's why these people, these defensive coordinators, you know, that's why Notre Dame's looking for a new one right now, right? This is a tough world out there, man.
Anything else?
Yeah, in your, if I may, in your opening statement, you said you had 3 games now to learn about your team. So what have you learned? And then you also went on to say there's a bunch of other teams out there like us. Can you define who's us? What are we?
I like it.
Who are we?
I like it. You're fact-checking me. Like last night back at Hillary.com, they had that whole cast of fact-checkers out there, checking Trump. You fact-check. I like that. You're coming back now. No, I think what we learned about ourselves is really what we've continued to really know about ourselves, in that we can win every week, but we could lose every week, and there's small margin for error. And consistently trying to eliminate the little ups and downs that sometimes are inherent with football. We've got to be precise. So without getting into all the details, that's who we are. Then the second thing, the question was, you say there's a lot of teams out there like us. One of the hardest things is to sit and watch college football on a weekend. You know, I was out recruiting, but I also had a lot of time to watch Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. I watched everybody play, starting with Wyoming, Eastern Michigan, Nevada, Purdue, Colorado State, Minnesota, Utah State, Air Force, Notre Dame, Duke. I could go down the list. I watched 100 games. There are a lot of teams like us that are week to week with no margin for error. Now, there's some other teams. I watched Boise, and I watched Boise put 400 yards on Oregon State in the first half. They're maybe not quite like us. Their margin for error is maybe a little greater. The point is, we have got this program to a point where we're in that group of no margin for error. You know, it's not a major upset if we beat somebody, but it's still not, oh God, if we get beat, it was a major upset, they beat us. That's who we are. And how do we maximize each guy? And how do we win those close games? That's what it is. That's what these next 9 games are probably going to be. That's what it is, man. That's why it's a great challenge, and that's why it's a lot more fun doing it than watching it. Because watching it, man, I feel sorry for you guys. That's a frustrating process to sit there and watch football. That's more exhausting than coaching now, because you sit there and say, why would they ever do that? How could that ever happen? And when you're coaching, you know why it happens, so you're not quite as frustrated, you know. It seems so obvious when you watch, but when you're coaching and it's not quite as obvious.
Anything else?
Let's see a show of hands right now. Who watched the debate last night? Is anybody willing to say who they thought won or lost, or does that need to be a secret ballot where nobody puts their hands up? Ed?
I didn't watch it.
Ah!
That mean Ed won.
Nah, well, I'm all gonna put you on the
My
spot
wife
now.
watched it, said Hillary won by
Yeah.
2 touchdowns.
You're deferring to your wife now, see? You journalists, right? That's why you ask the questions. Huh? Yeah. All right, guys.